Oh, man, that was an intense week of Big Ten basketball, folks. Indiana back on Thursday night went into Kohl Center, a place they hadn't won in 647 years, and were pushed to double overtime, only to fall to the Badgers by 7. And then on Sunday, look, I know Nebraska's 14th in the Big Ten and easily the worst team in the conference, but the Hoosiers had a turbulent roller coaster ride in Lincoln and found a way to win that ball game, get back to 500 in conference play, and now look ahead to Purdue and Michigan State this week. That is all we're going to talk about, all that and so much more here on episode 177 of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage for IU sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on January 12th, 2021, where I am your host, Nithin Christian. Here with me tonight is usual podcast co-host Matt Lukens, as well as Indiana HQ contributor Jevan McCoskey. Matt, I'll start it off with you. How's it going? And what are your big takeaways from IU's 1-1 week, which was really interesting?
Yeah, very much so. A 1-1 week. I feel like it was the weirdest 1-1 week where I feel like we were happier about the loss than we were happy about the win. I feel like we went into Wisconsin thinking we were going to get our doors blown off. We just wanted to keep it close. We lose in double overtime without our second best player so far this year. Okay, that's fine. We'll live with that. And then we go and play Nebraska, and we go in and we're like, we should win by 20. And then we go up by like 18 at one point, and it looks like we're cruising to a victory. And then Nebraska comes roaring all the way back, and then we still somehow find a way to win that game. And everybody's like, the sky is falling. We're terrible again. It's awful. But I think the key in all of this is that the Big Ten is so deep and so crazy, other than Nebraska. Again, no excuses for giving up that lead in the Nebraska game. However, that being said, the Big Ten is so deep and so crazy that these 1-1 weeks, this is a good week, right? If you go 0-2 in the week, you're mad. But when you go 1-1, you're like, all right, on to the next one.
Yeah, staying alive. Yeah, survive in advance.
Trying to get to that 10-10 mark in the Big Ten. Because right now, I know bracketology, I was looking at the recent bracketology, some people have like 11 Big Ten teams in. There's like 14 teams in the conference. There's like only 3. The people who aren't going to get the buys on the first week in the Big Ten tournament, those are the people not going to be in the NCAA tournament. Other than that, you're playing NCAA tournament games for the rest of the Big Ten tournament, which is insane. So this conference is ridiculously deep this year and going to be a ton of fun to watch for the rest of the year.
Yeah, Jevan, I'll throw it to you, man. What are your opening thoughts in a week where the Hoosiers could have lost both games, won both games, and ended up splitting them? What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a week where IU needs to be very fortunate in the fact that, we did walk away 1-1, where we very well easily could have walked away 0-2. I mean, we got a pretty slow start from Trace Jackson Davis in the Nebraska game. I mean, he got his first basket with 16 minutes left in the second half. It was a game, but that's also something you have to take away and be like, okay, we can win a Big Ten road game if Trace Jackson Davis doesn't play his best basketball. I know it's against Nebraska, but that's still a great takeaway that you have to look at. I see you laughing about the Nebraska comment, but I mean, it's Nebraska. But being able to push Wisconsin to double overtime, there are no moral victories, but if there were, I would have to say that would probably have to be one, especially being on the road against the number 8 team in the country. Those are my quick takeaways before we dive deep headfirst into everything.
Yeah, they were on the road against the number 8 team in the country and the number 64 referees in the country. I have to go into that. I'll go into it. I mean, look, I was at the Kohl Center on Thursday night, and I'll first of all, just right off the top, it is still extremely weird to attend a Big Ten basketball game with no one in attendance. In Madison, they didn't even have family members. At least I couldn't tell on a cursory glance. It didn't look like there were family members or close VIP members in attendance. It was flat out empty except for sort of required game personnel. That was strange, and the fake crowd noise continues to be something I hate. So hopefully, in the next 6 to 8 to 10 months, we get fans back in the stands at a full rate. But going back to the officiating, look, some people may say, hey, the crowd affects calls here and there or whatever. Well, there was no crowd to affect them. And still Still, we had a ridiculous disparity in fouls and free throw attempts, and I don't get it because Indiana, one of the things they do well, especially in this Archie Miller tenure, is get the ball inside and get it to your big guy in Trace Jackson Davis and get to the line. Unless you play the Badgers, apparently. By the way, Wisconsin's getting railroaded right now against Michigan as we're recording this on Tuesday night. But, my main takeaway, my opening thought from that game is, look, without Armand Franklin and with dubious officiating, Indiana went toe-to-toe for 47 minutes on the road against one of the best teams in the country, especially one of the best teams in the Big Ten. Look, I know IU's unranked, and they've been unranked all season, but these Hoosiers are a good basketball team, folks. And I know their game on Sunday was a little shaky, but I even thought against the Cornhuskers, they did a good job finding a way to win that game by 8 on short rest on the road after going down 3 in the final moments. Jevan, I'll toss it out to you. I mean, what stood out to you, especially in that Nebraska game? The Wisconsin one was back on Thursday. Is Nebraska a game where you look at it and you say, man, it was really disappointing to see that game go that way? Or do you look at it and say, hey, they averted disaster, avoided a horrible loss, and found a way to not only win, but for those of you interested out there, they also covered.
Yeah. So I think the easy answer is to say, man, how could you not be disappointed? There's that stigma around Nebraska, and they're the worst team in the Big Ten. But like I mentioned earlier, if you can perform and win in a game where Trace Jackson Davis doesn't score his first basket until 16 minutes left in the first half, and without your second leading scorer, it's hard to say that it was a disappointment. Because like Matt mentioned earlier, I mean, we don't have Armand, who is our second best player and second leading scorer, at least thus far in the season. And then Trace struggling the way that he was, it was extremely important to walk away with the win. And I mean, how about Rob coming out in the first 10 minutes of that first half and having 14 points, finishing with a career high 18? He did come down on his ankle a little weird at the end of the first half, but came out, started the second half, and in the postgame said that it was a little sore, but he'll be all right. So my biggest takeaway is the fact that we were able to walk away with a win despite not having Armand and despite a poor performance from Trace Jackson Davis, who still finished with a double-double.
Yeah, sorry about that. A little technical difficulty. Matt, same question to you. Do you look at it as, hey, oh, God, against the worst team in the Big Ten, they scraped by? Or do you say, hey, you know what? In this conference, a win is a win. Survive and advance, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah, survive and advance, I think, is the best way to put it. We're in the deepest conference in America. We're a good team. We're not a great team. There's a lot of great teams in the conference. I'd further down the line, if we're not going to beat any of these good teams, right, and we're only going to beat the teams we're supposed to beat, not get any of these upsets that we really need, I might be sitting there like, well, you know what, probably should have pulled off that Wisconsin game, looking back on it, right? But as of now, I'm fine with it. My take is pending on this week, really.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, right? How do IU fans look at that Wisconsin game? Do they look at it as one where you missed out on a great opportunity? Do you look at it as, hey, they played hard against a really good team? I know that there are a lot of folks that look at that at both different sides, but hey, the team moved on, found a way to knock off Nebraska on Sunday, and now full speed ahead to 2 really big games this week, which we'll touch on as we go on here tonight. But Jevan, my question to you at this point is, taking a step back, zooming out a little bit, this Indiana team has now played 6 conference games. They had their non-conference slate in the bag. What have we learned about this team? Is there anything about this IU team that you know now that you may not have known at the start of the season? Is it something like Anthony Leal stepping up? How about Jerome Hunter improving? It could be any sort of thing. What sort of stuff has surprised you, or what have you learned about this team with all these games having been played so far?
Well, yeah, that was something I was going to mention going back to the Wisconsin game was Anthony Leal coming out and having, so far the game of his career. And it's something that's really great to see. I have it written down here, Anthony Leal, yes, he shoots the ball well, but 2 things that he does better than anybody on Indiana's basketball team is, first of all, when he first catches the ball, his first motion is not to look to the basket. It's not to put up a shot. his first notion is, where is Trey Jackson Davis and how can I get him the ball? And that's something that I absolutely love about Anthony Leo. The other thing that he does, he's only a freshman, but he still plays pretty good defense and helps side defense for a freshman. So it's hard to talk about those two games and not mention Anthony Leal. But I mean, I keep going back to it. What I've learned about IU is that we don't go necessarily as far as Trace goes. We can even go farther, especially coming up in games where he doesn't play well, and we still walk away with victories.
I love that. And Matt, I mean, as you look at this team right now, Anthony Leal has stepped up. I think he's got a role even after Armand Franklin returns. But like I asked Jevan, zooming out from 30,000 feet high in the sky level, what have you learned about this team that you maybe didn't know at the start of the year?
That Jerome is going to be very hit or miss. At the beginning of the year, I really thought he was going to be a main contributor. And I think slowly as we've gone through the weeks, Jerome has been a very hot topic amongst IU fans. Don't play him. Don't play him. Like against the Wisconsin game, it was great. And a great performance. 5 of 8 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3, 12 points. That's great. That's what I was expecting from Jerome this season. Then you had a game like Nebraska where he's 4 of 7. Really just was not into the game all that much, was 1 of 3 from 3. You felt like a lot of awkward sequences with him offensively during the game. And he didn't have a turnover, but still it was just very awkward when he's on the floor. So I mean, he's still trying to get his sea legs, and I thought by now he would. And the same thing goes for Christian Lander, right? We came in thinking this year he might be a heavy contributor. 2 minutes against the Nebraska Cornhuskers. He came in and hit a 3-pointer. That's great. You'll love to see that for the confidence. But 2 minutes, you'd think against Nebraska he'd be getting a little bit more minutes, especially with another guard like Armand out. But he's still not getting run in, and Leal, rightfully so, as he's been playing and proving, has taken the minutes away from him, and we've been playing Durham as the backup point guard. Not where I thought this team was going to be come January. I thought that this would be around the time that Lander would start filling in. I'm not alarmed. I don't think he's going to transfer. I've seen some people asking me, is he going to transfer? That's a lot of speculation there. There's a lot of reading in between the lines. I don't think he's going to transfer. He's an 18-year-old kid, just turned 18 playing, or 17-year-old kid playing in college basketball. And the game is extremely fast for him right now. And as time goes on, and maybe as the season goes on, he'll start playing 10 minutes a game. And then next year, having a summer and to look at tape and work on stuff, he's going to be a monster come next year, because he's going to finally reach that level where he's going to be able to play at his utmost potential in college basketball. Yes, Jevan.
So my thing with Christian is people were asking me should he have stayed another year in high school? And my answer to that is, what was he going to get in that last year of senior year of high school that he's not going to get in a freshman year of college? Exactly. And also, sophomore year, he's going to be the age of a freshman, and he's already going to have that Big Ten experience under his belt that the incoming freshmen aren't going to have. So, and about the transferring, I don't think he's ever going to leave whenever he's going to continue to play with Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal, considering that he's played AAU ball with them for the last 3 or 4 years. So the transferring thing can be put to rest. I don't think that's going to happen. But I know we'll get to it later talking about Christian a little bit, but I'm still all in on Christian Lander.
Yeah, I think Lander's someone who does still have a, unlimited potential as far as his prospects at Indiana. It might take a year or two for him to really reach that level, but there are plenty of examples of point guards who in their freshman year have a tough time. I mean, even the one and done point guards usually have a lot of really steep learning curve adjusting to whatever Power 5 high major conference they're in. And Lander, like you guys said, reclassified. He moved up a year in advance. So we're expecting a bit of a rocky road. And here's the deal, okay? I don't care what his season numbers look like. Can he just continually show improvement? As far as the thing that I've learned about this team, especially over the course of the last week or two, this team is good enough to beat anyone. And look, I understand that right now I usually look at their record, they're 3-3 in the Big Ten, and they generally look like more of an average team than a top-of-the-line college basketball team. By no means am I saying they're Gonzaga. But what I am saying is that this Indiana team has the personnel and has the coaching staff and has the mentality to where they are capable of winning any game on any night. And I know they haven't beaten Purdue in 3 years, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But they're capable of beating Purdue, and they're capable of beating Michigan State on Sunday. They're capable of beating Iowa, Illinois, or Wisconsin. And they're capable of beating whoever they play, even if it's in the NCAA tournament, right? They had a really tough non-conference schedule. And this team especially is tougher between the ears than any other Archie Miller team we've seen so far at IU. They were up against everything, and we've talked about it already, against Wisconsin. And they fought tooth and nail to the very end. And it was a tough game on Sunday against Nebraska. Nebraska had a full week off before they played Indiana. They are the most desperate team in the conference, having not won a Big Ten game yet. And Indiana came out, started fast, took a couple hits to the chin, and bounced back and found a way to win that game. So, if you ask me, the biggest thing I've learned over the last 4 to 6 weeks is that Indiana is tough between the ears. They are capable of fighting through the Big Ten gauntlet, and they're not going to win every game. There are going to be a bunch of losses between now and March. But all in all, if you ask me, they're a really tough crew, and they're a tightly knit crew, and I think that's going to pay dividends in the future. So here's the deal, folks. We all know Trayce Jackson-Davis is Indiana's best player. There's no argument about it. He just won Big Ten Player of the Week. He had, another 2 double-doubles added to his ledger this past week. But the question I have for both of you, and the question I had for our Twitter followers this week, who's Indiana's second best player? Who's Indiana's second most important player? Obviously, Armaan Franklin hasn't played the last couple of games. We've seen Rob Finney step up in his absence. We've seen Jerome Hunter step up in his absence. Matt, I'm going to ask you first. Of all the guys on this roster, right now, on January 12th, who do you say is Indiana's second best guy? Who's Indiana's Robin to Trayce Jackson-Davis's Batman?
I mean, it's Armaan, right? He's their second leading scorer. He's probably our best on-ball defender on the team. So I'd give it to Armaan. I mean, you can say that Rob Finney might be the best on-ball defender, but the switchability of Armaan gives him, in my head, a little bit of step above Rob. But so in both sides of the ball, I would say Armaan to Trayce. When Armaan's playing well, the rest of the team is usually playing well. When Armaan's not playing well, not the case. We've seen games where Trayce Jackson-Davis, like the Nebraska game, isn't playing at his highest potential, and we can win. But if Armaan's not playing well and not on, the team's really sunk. So I'm going to say Armaan.
Jevan, what are your thoughts?
So I agree, Armaan, but Armaan's not healthy and he's not playing. He hasn't played the last 2 games. And in those 2 games, the biggest player to me that stepped up has been Al Durham. He's been a leader. He's been a senior. He's averaging 11.1 points a game, nearly 4 rebounds, and just over 3 assists a game. He is shooting, only 40% from the field, only 30% from 3. But if you ask me, I'll take that, especially with this Indiana team. Shooting 30% from 3 is not terrible. And the biggest thing with Al to me is that these last 4 games, he's really stepped up and become a leader. I mean, it was something that was questioned. Him and Rob both. They were both Archie questioned him, and he wanted more out of him. And I think they've both done a good job responding. But I just think he gets a little notch to me because he's a senior, and so I'll give him the second best player with Armaan out.
Yeah, Durham's really picked it up, and not only in the box score, and like you said, Jevan, his leadership has really stood out to me. Like I said, I was in Madison Thursday night, and there was a particular play in the first half where Indiana was really struggling. I think they were down 10 or 12 at this point, and Durham put his head down, drove past his defender, took the contact, got a right-handed layup, got fouled, and Indiana for once in that game went to the free throw line, and he made that to cut into Wisconsin's lead a little bit, and it sort of got the ball rolling for IU in Madison to get back into the game. And then, of course, we saw Anthony Leal knock down a few threes, which really helped IU going into halftime. For me, the second biggest guy on this team, I get it. Durham has been good, and Franklin's been key. I'm going to look at Race Thompson, and I know he's come along with some tough games here recently, but against Maryland last Monday night, he put up a double-double, had a really strong first half. And look, if Joey Brunk doesn't return, you better believe that Thompson's front court presence is going to be really important to this team. And I thought even with the foul trouble he was dealing with against Wisconsin, he had a couple key plays in that game, a couple of block shots. He then followed it up with 11 points and 5 boards against Nebraska. if you're not going to have Joey Brunk, Grace Thompson's a guy who I think has added emphasis to this team. And as we saw with Armand, Indiana can tread water without him. And as we've seen through Al Durham struggles, Indiana's been able to hang in there against Big Ten opposition. I'm very frightened to see what this team would have to do if Grace Thompson would have to go. You would probably see more small ball, some more Jerome Hunter playing that 4 position. But wow, that would frighten me. But we sent out the question on Twitter. We've got some responses in already, and this poll is going to be open for a full week. So definitely head over to the Hoosier Sound and respond to our poll. Armand Franklin's got the lead. So most of you are agreeing with Matt, and 63% of the votes going to Franklin, 26% is going to Finney, 11% is going to Thompson. And the other options available there as well. So feel free to, give us your responses there if you believe it is Al Durham or someone else on the roster. Now, this is the part of the podcast I'm most excited for. So for the first time in the history of the Hoosier Sound, we are going to play Impeach or Inaugurate. And I feel like we need to have a sound effect for this or some sort of jingle, but we're not going to have that tonight. Obviously, it's a timely reference. It's the first and only time we are going to play Impeach or Inaugurate on the Hoosier Sound podcast. We're going to lay out a bunch of IU basketball topics and rapid fire go through them and say if we want to impeach them, which means we don't like them, trending downwards, or if we're going to inaugurate them, we want to see more of them, we like them. So the first one we're going to start off with is Big Ten officiating. Hey, Matt, are you impeaching or are you inaugurating the Big Ten referees?
You just gave me the biggest softball of all time. Impeach? Like, are you kidding me? Like, I can't. I literally was losing my mind. I was driving home from Indiana, watching this Wisconsin game, which I probably shouldn't have been doing. Don't watch TV and drive. However, I was like rage screaming music and watching this game because of the Big Ten refs. So no, Big Ten refs are gone. Can we? Everybody agrees with me, right? Everybody agrees with me. Correct. Thank you.
Jevan, impeach or inaugurate the Big Ten officials?
I agree, impeach, but only to a certain extent because that game still could have been won, even though we had so many chances to win that game.
Fair. Absolutely fair. However, that being said, they definitely did not help.
No, 100%. It's real hard to win a game playing 5-on-8, but Trace Jackson got it to his left hand. That you have to finish through contact. Yeah. Dimitri Trice, you can't let him score 2 game-time baskets at the end of overtime or at the end of regulation at the end of the first overtime. But impeach, absolutely impeach.
Yeah, a couple missed opportunities for IU for sure. A couple silly turnovers I recall, especially in the second half in overtime too. Yeah, this is impeach. Get him out of here. I don't know. You might as well just play games without referees. Now, Chris, our friend here, says Wisconsin pays off the refs. I don't know if I'll be able to go that far, but impeach them. Get them out of here. All right. Let's move on to some of the more specific IU topics. Let's start off with Indiana's veteran guards, Rob Finney and Al Durham. Jevan, are you impeaching these guards? You don't see less of them, or are you inaugurating them? You want to see more of Rob and Al, especially the way they played this past week.
I mean, you said if they're going to play the way they played the last week, inaugurate them all day, 7 days out of the week. I mean, if we're going to get – I mean, obviously he's not going to have career performances every single game, but if we're going to get that aggressive Rob Finney and the shot making and shot creating Al Durham, inaugurate all day.
Matt, what you got?
we're on the same wavelength. We're sharing the same brain cells. Yeah. We need a solid point guard and a solid presence with the ball. And Rob, for the first 10 games or however long the season, first 8 games of the season, was not that. But for the last couple games has been a lot better. I was riling up against him on Twitter because he was driving me insane watching him just dribble with the ball, take 3 steps into the, beyond the 3-point line, then dribble back and then dribble forward and then dribble back. It's like he's trying to penetrate, but he's not actually trying at all. And the defense is okay, I'll let you just dribble the ball in circles basically for the next 10 seconds. So he's been much better. He's been a lot more active. He's been a lot more aggressive. That's great. And I think that has to do a little bit with Archie, the side tangent. He's been yelling at them about don't turn it over, don't turn it over, don't turn it over. So sometimes to a point guard that's going to say, okay, I can't be as aggressive, right? If I'm too aggressive, right, I might overextend, and then all of a sudden that turns into a dangerous play, into a turnover, into a bounce pass, kick ball, whatever. There's a lot of different things that can go wrong. So I'm not going to do what could possibly go wrong because I'm worried about, the coach said we're not going to turn over the ball. So I'll wait until the play, can start. Anyways, nice to see them get on the board and get started.
Yeah, for sure. And full disclosure, guys, until last week, this was full impeach for me. I was ready to see Christian Lander and Parker Stewart and Anthony Leal, and I wanted to see anyone but Rob and Al in the backcourt. And look, they turned me 180 degrees the other way. The last two games, they've played much better. Al, especially, when you talk about the intangibles aspect of the game, I'll tell you guys, we need to see an aggressive Rob Finney. So I'm inaugurating these two, but only if they play the way they played this past week. And I'm not talking about statistically. I'm just talking about their style of play, their attitude, their aggressiveness, their assertiveness. That's what you need to see in the Big Ten, because no one cares about your school or your history or whatever. You need to put the pedal to the metal, and Rob and Al have both shown when they do that, they can really elevate this IU team to another level. All right, the next one's kind of the other piece of the puzzle as far as Indiana's backcourt's concerned. Matt, Christian Lander, impeach or inaugurate?
See, for me, the easy answer would be impeach because he hasn't been playing well, right? And he hasn't been playing a lot. But I think the tough answer, the answer that is needed for Lander is inaugurate. He needs more game time. Just throw him in there. He's going to have some tough plays. He's going to make mistakes. I know Archie's going to rip his hair out if we turn over the ball more than 10 times in a game. And Lander might go in there and turn over the ball 3 times and have 3 terrible three-pointers taken, and he'll be like, what the heck? But you need to live with those, right? He's a young kid learning on the fly. Let him learn on the fly. Let him make mistakes, and he will improve faster than anybody else on this roster.
Jevan, what are your thoughts? Christian Lander, freshman point guard, impeach or inaugurate?
So it's hard to impeach somebody when they haven't been in office, and I'm using that as the fact that he hasn't been on the floor. And you say freshman mistakes. How about senior year of high school mistakes? Like let him get in the game and make those mistakes, but let him also thrive. No basketball player can go in for 2 to 5 minutes and find a rhythm. It's absolutely impossible and especially for a guard, let alone. So you can't impeach him yet. So I guess the answer you have to go with is inaugurate, because you can't impeach him because he hasn't been given the opportunity. I mean, you could say he has, but really he hasn't.
Yeah, right. You're getting inaugurated for a 4-year term, right? Yeah, so that's what's going on here. Look, I agree with what you guys are saying, but turning this into a basketball discussion, right? Like here's the thing: you're gonna have to work with Archie Miller on this. If I had words for Christian Lander, like Archie Miller is going to have to help Christian Lander, and there are certain games, like the Wisconsin game, where you're going to have to impeach him. In other words, you're going to have to bench him. You're going to have to put him on the sideline, let him watch the game from the sideline for that particular day. But there are other games, and we saw this in the non-conference early on especially, where he can give Indiana another dimension in the backcourt. So it's going to be a game-to-game thing. I know in terms of politics, it's a 4-year inauguration, but for this particular player, Indiana's going to have to go game to game. Anthony Leal was the flavor of the week in IU basketball, and Jevan, look, Armand Franklin's going to return at some point for IU, but based on what you've seen so far, impeach or inaugurate Anthony Leal?
Quick story, my senior year of high school, Anthony Leal, I played at Terre Haute South, he played at Bloomington South. We played them, and their team was 26-0 at that point. We went and played them, and I saw a lot of Anthony Leal last week that I saw that night that I played Anthony Leal, and it's exciting to see. I mean, he's Mr. Basketball for Indiana, his senior year of high school. I'm absolutely going to inaugurate him because he brings confidence to a team that lacks a lot sometimes. When one player gets a shot to go in the basket, it opens up confidence for everybody on the floor. And that is, along with the post feeds, the trace, that is the second best thing that I think Anthony Leal does. And then obviously he can knock down shots from basically as soon as he catches the ball, he can knock down a shot. I've seen him do it. So inaugurate.
Matt, how about you?
I'm also inaugurate. And I think there's minutes for him to find too. There's some, like Trey Galloway, God bless him. He's been very important so far this year. Has looked a little overwhelmed in some games. And there's some games where you might be able to plug somebody like Leland and take
Right.
his minutes entirely, and he'll be good. So I really like Leal's minutes. I really like what he's done so far, and he's really growing into his role. So why not give him more minutes, right? The more you give a freshman minutes, the more he grows. And so that's better for the future of the program as well. So yes, Leal, more.
Yeah, full scale inauguration here for Anthony Leal. I mean, just watching the game against Wisconsin in person, watching the game against Nebraska on TV, Leal does give defenses something else to think about when he's on the court. And even now, it's just been a couple of games, but he's already given Matt Painter something to scout. He's given Tom Izzo something to think about on Sunday when the Hoosiers play the Spartans. Just his presence has given Indiana a different wrinkle. And then he does a lot of other stuff well, too, if you ask me. He does look lost at times, but who's blaming? He's only a freshman. I mean, come on. He does a lot of things, too. A lot of times he's in the right spot defensively. He seems to be a really good communicator when he's on the floor. And one thing I noticed is he's got the respect of his teammates, especially the older guys. Al Durham talked post-game on Thursday how Anthony Leal works harder than almost anyone on the team. So hands down, absolutely inaugurate him. Let's bring up our last and final and most important subject here. Archie Miller. Jevan, as far as Archie Miller is concerned, are you impeaching him or are you inaugurating him?
Man, I will. Let's see. I want to say it. I want to say it. I'll inaugurate Archie Miller.
Okay. All right.
And I think, last episode you touched on it against the games like Penn State and Maryland. He made the right choices. Mid-game, he was able to find a way to win a Big Ten game. And yes, we didn't find the way to win against Wisconsin, but we did find a way to win. And when we were down by 3 with like less than 3 minutes left against Nebraska, he's shown me that he knows what he's doing. And also, like, you can only coach so much. You can only prep so much. If your team doesn't go out there and hit shots, a lot of that can't fall on you all of the time. Like, I might be wrong. That might be just my opinion. But I will inaugurate him. I don't want to impeach him, so I'll inaugurate him.
Matt, this might take a full week or two to deliberate over. But as of Tuesday night, January 12th, Archie Miller, impeach or inaugurate?
Inaugurate. I think you could ask me this question 2 weeks ago. It would have been a different answer. But I think now it's time to think about it and not be emotional about us losing to Northwestern because they look like a good team. I was the one thing I've been holding out on Archie about is his player development. And we've seen Trace get better in his second season. We've seen Armand get better in his second season. We've seen Anthony Leal get better mid-season, right? And there's a couple people now starting to come through the program where I feel like they were better than what they came in as, which is nice to see because previously, if you would ask me that question after last year, the answer would be, I'm not sure anybody's better than what they were day one. And throughout the season, you're supposed to see some improvement in guys. We didn't really see that at all last year, in my opinion. I think some people are starting to take the jump now. And if this Rob Finney and Al Durham play continues for the rest of the season, that's a humongous if. But if it does, this team is going to look so much better come March than it did in November. So as of now, it's inaugurate.
Yeah. Well, okay. So here's the thing. All right, Archie Miller had a good week. He's had a good couple of weeks. And overall, I think he's had a good season. But when you look at the overall body of work, I'm still leaning impeach here, okay? I'm still leaning impeach because after all, Indiana has struggled to stay over 500 in Big Ten play in his tenure. And look, even now, because of that loss to Northwestern, because you weren't able to close out Wisconsin, you're still 3-3. And I mean, I know it's a tough conference and I know it's competitive every night, but I've believed from the start of the season that this Indiana team's been really good. And well, look, in a couple weeks, in a couple months, maybe I'll change my mind. But if you're asking me to vote tonight on January 12th, 2020, I'm leaning impeach. But I know this is a discussion that Indiana fans have every day of the week. We see it on social media. And so that wraps up our impeach or inaugurate battle. Jevan, you've got something. What's up?
So your reasoning, and I'm not questioning you. Obviously, It's very easy to say impeach. Yeah. But your reasoning, you kind of went into being 3-3, and in the conference. Are you going to impeach Matt Painter for being 3-3 in the conference?
I mean, look, Matt Painter's got an impressive body of work, and he's won conference titles. And I know the NCAA tournament success hasn't been there, but based on I think the level of expectation Purdue fans had after Gene Cady, Painter has more than ably filled in his shoes. Whereas if you compare the resumes of the previous head coach here to the current head coach, you can't quite make the same comparison. And look, I think the big question, and we don't have to go in depth on this tonight, maybe next week, maybe in the weeks that follow. I think the big question that all of you have to watch as you watch Indiana this week or next week or whenever is, what does Indiana do really well? I mean, what's Indiana's identity? Is it the defense? Is it the post play? Is it the guard play? Is it the up and down? Is it the competitive level? I mean, that's a question we've got to think about here as the season goes on. But it's time for Who Won the Week in IU Sports. And look, there are a lot of different options to choose from, a lot of good candidates out there. But we have to go with football head coach Tom Allen, who won the AFCS, the American Football Coaches Association National Coach of the Year Award. It's the first time an IU coach has won that award since 1967. He was Big Ten Coach of the Year, and he's still a candidate for the Bear Bryant Award as well as the George Munger Coach of the Year Award. This one, Allen said, this one was special because his peers vote on it. It's the Coaches Association, it's his guys. So Allen's going to be thrilled with that. And look, it doesn't help that there's a little sweet $100,000 bonus attached to that, according to his IU contract. So Tom Allen definitely won the week with his Coach of the Year award. Also, on the other side, in case you hadn't heard, former IU basketball player Thomas Bryant tore his ACL for Washington. He was off to a great start, so it's tough to see that injury happen to Bryant over with the Washington Wizards. But friendly reminder, if you would like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember, stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ or at the Hoosier Sound. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. That's the stuff that really matters. So your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans like yourselves. So IU football. Over the past week, a lot of seniors have had to make some pretty tough decisions. And look, a lot of players have decided to return to IU and return to Bloomington because this year, especially with the COVID issues, the NCAA has said, even if you're a senior, you don't lose a year of eligibility. You can return so that next year, ideally, with fans in attendance and a full season, you get the actual college football experience. And look, a number of guys did return. Mackenzie Nwora came back, the offensive lineman. Superstar wide receiver Ty Freifogel said he's returning. Guard Dylan Powell's coming back. Key defenders like Marcelino McCrary Ball as well as Raheem Lane. Saw a few guys leave the team as well. And Whop Fillier, our fan favorite slot wide receiver, although sometimes he runs backwards, Whop Fillier did decide to move on to the next level, the NFL draft. Offensive lineman Harry Kreider said so as well. Junior safety Jamar Johnson moved on, as well as defensive lineman Javon Swan. Some guys transferred in. Ole Miss defensive end Ryder Anderson's coming to join IU next year, as well as offensive lineman Zach Carpenter from Michigan. And for those of you still wondering, there are a couple big decisions left. Jerome Johnson was a senior this past year, and the big interior defensive lineman has to determine whether or not he's returning back to IU next season. And then while it's probably unlikely, juniors Micah McFadden, Michael Penix Jr., and Stevie Scott still haven't formally announced whether they're returning. I think for those three, you can assume they're coming back unless they say otherwise. So, Matt, let me ask you, of all these players coming and going, which move, either stay or leave, surprises you the most? Which one do you think did you read and say, wow, I did not expect that to happen?
Freifogel, I think, is the correct answer here. I I thought he was going to be like a top 3-4 rounds, kind of third or fourth round wide receiver pick. That somebody who's going to pick. I'll be like, I wish the Eagles picked him. I wanted him on our team. He would have been done great in our system, whatever. But he's coming back for next year. I think he was the last person on the list I thought would come back. I thought WAP might come back. He didn't come back. That's fine. Go get the bag. I thought Jamar Johnson might come back. Yeah. I think he made the right decision and went to the NFL.
Me too.
For his future, because he had a fantastic year, and the scouts are going to look at his stuff, and he's going to kill it at the combine. And he'll be one of those guys that jumps from maybe a second-day prospect or a third-day prospect to a second-day prospect. Mm-hmm. So I like Jamar leaving. I think it's a great idea. But Freifogel, by far, surprised me. When I thought people were made up a fake Twitter post because they posted it, and one of my friends sent it to me like immediately as he posted. It was like, he's coming back. I'm like, what? But no. I mean, I'm really happy. His partnership and his chemistry with Penix, when we get Penix back healthy, is what's going to make or break this team next year, or is going to make it a lot better next year. It's not going to make or break, but it's going to make this team so much better than it would have been if Freifogel had left.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the best quarterback receiver combinations in the country next season. Jevan, I'm going to ask a slightly different question to you. Out of all of these come and go decisions, which one do you think will make the biggest impact for this IU football team next season, whether it's Freifogel returning or maybe someone like WAP leaving?
Well, the one that's going to make the biggest impact is obviously Freifogel coming back. We just said, between him and Penix, that's one of the best combinations in the country. But I will say, I wasn't necessarily as surprised to see WAP leave. But with Freifogel returning, when I saw that, in my mind, I thought that WAP could possibly be coming back. But I don't think there's anything else he could have really done that would improve his draft stock. I mean, obviously, if he had like a massive year, obviously that would have. But go to the NFL, do what you have to do. Happy for him, obviously. But I mean, the correct and only answer is Freifogel coming back.
Yeah, absolutely, no question about it. The one guy I'm paying attention to here is Marcelino McCrary-Ball, and I know what you guys said on the offensive side of the ball, but if I look on defense, Marcelino was a guy who's been in the system for a long time. One of Tom Allen's favorite players. Just when you hear about Allen talking about him. He was a Reese's Senior Bowl watch list guy at the start of last season, and then he was afflicted with an injury, wasn't able to play a game last year. After watching this IU team go 6-2 and make the top 10 in polls everywhere, you better believe Marcelino is going to be fired up and ready to play next season for IU. And the one area where I think IU really could have used some help last year, some of those blitz pressures without bringing someone like Tywan Mullen in to attack the quarterback, Marcelino McCrary-Ball will definitely fit that bill with him returning next season. Yeah, what's up, Jevan?
So one of the people that I'm really I need them to come back just for like personal reasons. I will not be as excited on this defense if Jerome Johnson doesn't come back. I mean, he was the highest rated returning defensive tackle coming into last season. He should be again coming into this next season. And also Micah McFadden. I don't expect him to leave, but
right.
But also it's kind of like, can he recreate the season that he had this year? It's a question that he's going to have to ask himself. But I don't expect him to leave. But, I mean, if he leaves, that leaves a big hole at that linebacker position.
Well, I got a question for you guys. So we have 4 people with remaining decisions, right? We got Jerome, Micah, Penix. He'll come back probably, but Penix and Stevie Scott.
Yep.
Out of those 4, which if you had to lose one, which is the one that you lose?
Ooh, I'd go. I think I'd go Stevie Scott, and make no mistake about it. I think Scott's really valuable to this offense, but with Samson James in the fold and with Tim Baldwin emerging at the end of last year, out of those 4, you obviously would hate to lose any of them. I'd go with Scott.
No, I'm just kidding. I have to agree. Probably Stevie Scott, but I mean that's not me saying that I want to lose him by any means.
No, and it's not me saying that any of them are even cornerstone.
He's a cornerstone to our offense. But probably Stevie Scott.
Yeah, exactly. And just to sort of put a bow on the season, Indiana finished 7th in the. They finished 12th in the AP poll for this past college football season after Alabama smashed Ohio State in the title game. But interestingly, a couple other publications put out too early to call top 25s. And Joel Klatt, the Fox Sports #1 analyst, had Indiana 7th in his 2021 preview, and ESPN put IU 10th. And remember, the schedule hasn't been finalized yet, but Indiana's, as of now, supposed to play Cincinnati in the non-conference and face Iowa in week 1. Again, that has not been scheduled. That has not been finalized yet, but that is the current temporary assignment for IU in week 1. So that one will be fun to watch. Jevan, as we head to our social media shout out tonight, I know you saw something interesting on Instagram that you wanted to point out that was related to the IU basketball team.
Yeah, IU basketball fans, please cover your ears because you probably don't want to hear this, but also don't look too deep into it. So leaving Madison, Wisconsin, the team decided to travel straight to Lincoln, Nebraska. They didn't come back to Bloomington. They just traveled straight to Lincoln. And I follow, most of the players. I'm sure a lot of people do. I follow a lot of them on social media. And they had a lot of downtime in between games, and Trace Jackson Davis went live. And one of the very first, he was kind of playing like a little Q&A. He was having his fans asking questions. And one question came up that was asked a ton of times, and it was, will you be returning next year to play basketball in Indiana? And as much as you probably don't want to look into this, his answer was, the only way I'm coming back is if I can win a dunk contest at Hoosier Hysteria. Now, you might say, put him in, he'll probably win. So he'll be coming back, and that might be the way he's thinking. But I don't know. That's I kind of heard it, and I was like, oh, man, I don't know if I like hearing that.
Of course. And he's somebody who right now, just on a quick look, seems to be getting second-round grades as far as the NBA draft is concerned. Of course, a good week, a good month can change that in a second. So, as far as that's concerned, on Instagram, you can follow us at indiana.hq, and then everywhere else, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, you can find us at Indiana HQ. Make sure to follow us if you haven't already, and if you have, tell a friend, tell a family member, tell a stranger. Tell them on the street. We don't care. As long as they're big-time IU football or basketball or IU sports fans like those of you out there. So let's look ahead. Indiana basketball, as we were just talking about, has a couple big matchups this week. They're against unranked teams, but you better believe there's a whole lot on the line. Purdue comes to Bloomington Thursday night to play Indiana at 7 o'clock. That game's on FS1. Then on Sunday, again, quick turnaround, Indiana heads to East Lansing to face the Michigan State Spartans. That one will be a noon Eastern start on CBS. Let's start with the Purdue game. IU right now, well, look, they're tied with Purdue in the standings. Pretty much both teams are 3-3 in Big Ten play. Purdue's coming off a big road win at Michigan State on Friday, coming back from 17 down to beat the Spartans by 1 in the Breslin Center. Purdue takes on IU at 7 p.m. Thursday night on Fox Sports 1. Archie Miller is still looking for his first win against the Boilermakers. He is 0-7 in his tenure. Purdue is Ken Pom's 34th ranked team in the country. Their offense is 47th, defense is 37th. They play at a really slow tempo, had some questionable losses at the non-conference slate at Miami. Neutral site loss to Clemson as well, but they're playing well. Like I said, 1 point win over Michigan State. They knocked off Maryland at home. That's kind of a thorny team here recently, so took care of business there. And their best player is Travion Williams, big-time interior post presence. He's 5th right now in the Ken Pom Big Ten Player of the Year standings, 15 and 10 average. Other important players on that roster include Sasha Stefanovic, who's 35 of 71 from 3 this year, 49%, and Eric Hunter, who typically does well against IU. He did well in both games last season. So, Jevan, let's start with you. As you look at this matchup, rivalry game, no one's going to be there except for a select few family members and especially invited guests. What are you watching for in this game? Because we know on the surface, Indiana cannot afford to lose.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing I think everyone that's watching this game will want to see is the matchup between Trace and Travion. Watching them go back and forth, it's going to be a big man battle. Neither one of them can really stretch the floor. They're both, interior work around the rim type of players. But one thing that I'm actually more interested in is who we throw at Stefanovic. I mean, will it be Armon if he's healthy? Will it be Rob if he's healthy? Or will it be Rob if Armon is healthy? I think, in my opinion, I would rather throw Armon on him just because he gives a little bit more height, so he can disrupt more shots. But I think, the thing that everyone's going to be watching is definitely Trace versus Travion for sure.
Yeah. Matt, as you look at this matchup, Ken Palm predicts Indiana's going to win by 3. It's supposed to be a close game. You know, Purdue's not going to go down easily. What does Indiana have to do if they want to come away with a victory?
I mean, they got to guard people, right? Like, that's it, right? Like, the last couple games, they didn't even guard anybody. Wisconsin, really, I mean, tore up our defense for a Wisconsin team. Like, they don't score a ton of points, Wisconsin, but, you know, they were shooting pretty well from the floor, and then Nebraska got buckets on us. Can't let that happen against Purdue. They get out in front of us, and they're a team that can just suck you up and just spit you back out again. You're not going to be able to come back and win that game. So we have to, you know, definitely score and keep them from scoring. Wow, good job, Matt. You just explained basketball. And another thing, I'm very worried about Zach Edey. So if you don't know who Zach Edey is, haven't learned about him yet, 7'3" freshman for Purdue. I don't know who we're going to put on him to guard him, because I was hoping that we'd have Joey Brunk back by now so that we can throw Joey in and hopefully put some height on him. But, you know, God forbid Trace is in some foul trouble. All of a sudden, our tallest player is like 6'7", 6'8", against 7'3". Like, Edey's going to be eaten if we don't have players to match up with him. So hopefully Trace stays out of foul trouble. We stay out of foul trouble. The refs don't screw us 2 out of 3 games. And I do feel like we'll match up pretty well against this Purdue team. They're scrappy. They try really hard. They're blue collar. They're exactly what you expect from a Purdue team, from a Painter team. But I think we can beat them on their home floor and finally get Archie a win against Purdue.
One thing that I was on a podcast yesterday, and we discussed this game as well. And one thing that I guarantee Archie Miller is preaching during the preparation for this game is transition defense. He has to, because if you look at the games against Nebraska and even Wisconsin doesn't play fast, neither does Purdue, and they still got easy transition layups. And that's the reason Nebraska got back in the game, was because our transition defense was just so subpar. And it's something that I've discussed on this podcast before. Our transition defense needs to be better, and if it's not, that is going to be the downfall of this team. So that is something that I guarantee Archie is preaching throughout practices this week.
Yeah, that's going to be an important part to the game, right? In that fast break situation, a lot of people say those are some easy points, and in this game, points seem to be that they might be at a premium. So you better believe those fast break opportunities will be key. 2 stats that I'm going to look at. I'm not going to bore you guys with the analytics explanations, but I'm going to tell you this: 2 categories Indiana needs to win on Thursday night. They got to win the turnover battle, and they've got to have more free throw attempts than Purdue. Those are the 2 categories Indiana's got to win. If they do. If they don't win both, they're going to lose. So just think about that as you watch Thursday night. So it's prediction time. Matt, I'm going to start with you. Who wins and what scoreline do you have?
66-62 IU. Pull it off. Finally get Archie's first win against Purdue, which will be a nice monkey to get off his back.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Jevan, what do you got?
I also have IU winning, but I don't think it's going to be close. I don't think it's going to be a relatively close game. I think we will score around 66, 68, 67 points, but I think we're going to hold Purdue to like 52, 54 points.
Ooh, I like that. I'm going to go with a little more high scoring. I think it's going to be close. It just feels like a rivalry game. It feels like it's going to be a nitty-gritty nail-biter. I've got 70-67. Indiana coming away with the win, so all 3 of us feel like the Hoosiers will come away victorious, and that would put them over 500 in Big Ten play, which this season is notable accomplishment. Then we got the Sunday afternoon game. They head to East Lansing to take on Michigan State. And just as a little interesting quirk, Michigan State actually plays later on Thursday night than Indiana does. So as far as the rest advantage, it's pretty neutral. In fact, Indiana, I guess, would have a 2-hour rest advantage over Michigan State after the Spartans play Iowa late on Thursday night. The Hoosiers head to East Lansing, noon Eastern start on CBS. Michigan State's unranked for the first time this season. I believe it's the first time they're unranked since 2017. They're Ken Palm's 44th ranked team, offense 50, defense 47. Actually, if you look at the Ken Palm, Michigan State's lower than Purdue is, and that might surprise some of you listening out there today. They're projected to finish 8-12 in conference play. Indiana's projected to finish 10-10, as is Purdue. The best player on Michigan State is Aaron Henry. Ben Davis guy, Indianapolis, 14-6 this season. Transfer Joey Hauser isn't bad either. Big body. I feel like Race Thompson or Trace Jackson Davis will go up against him. Hauser this year is averaging 12 points, 8 rebounds. So, Matt, I'm going to flip it over to you. When you look at this matchup, Indiana seems to have an easier time against Michigan State than other Big Ten teams. How do you look at this matchup, and what do you think Indiana needs to do if they want to finish off the week with a win in East Lansing?
Yeah, if they want to finish off with a win in East Lansing, they need to keep the guards on Michigan State from getting going. I think that's the key. Look, Aaron Henry, Joey Hauser, they're going to get theirs, right? They're going to score. They're really good, experienced players in an Izzo system. They're going to do well. But the make or break part of this Michigan State team is Rocket Watts and Josh Langford. Josh Langford was supposed to be really good last year, and they're very excited about this Michigan State last year because of Josh Langford. Hasn't been playing very well this year. He's only averaging 8.9 points. That's way below what he was averaging prior to his injury and being out last year. So if he gets going, he gets hot, that's somebody that can carry a Michigan State team to a win. And then there's Rocket Watts, who has one of the best names in college basketball. Great name. He came out and started being a stud towards the end of last year. People were talking about him having a kind of a breakout performance in the NCAA tournament for Michigan State. Averaging 22 minutes, 9.7 points per game. He's a guy that can go off and like a firecracker, just poof, and all of a sudden he's got 20 points and is 6 of 6 from 3, and he's a very hit or miss shooter. So keeping both of those guys in check, making sure that Aaron Henry is still shooting 25% from 3, getting out and contesting 3-pointers. I think that's going to be the key to this Michigan State game.
Yeah, Watts is a guy who is supposed to be kind of the heir to the throne as far as the Michigan State point guard position after Cassius Winston moved on, but he's had a little bit of a tough time adjusting. Jevan, how about you? What are you looking forward to in this matchup between IU and Michigan State on Sunday?
Just to touch on Rocket Watts, like he's a player that I followed a long time. He played at Spire Academy with LaMelo Ball, and I mean there was games where he, like you said, firecracker. He'd have 61 game, like, and he'd just shoot lights out. But the one thing that comes to my mind when I think what we need to do to win this game is definitely control the rebounds. We have to rebound. We cannot give Michigan State second chance opportunities because, like you said, Aaron Henry, 25% three-point shooter. Rocket Watts, hit or miss. If he's missing, we cannot give them extra opportunities to put points on the board. It's going to be a tough game to win. It always is going to East Lansing, but we have had good success against Michigan State in the last 2 or 3 years. So it's definitely not impossible. And like you said earlier this episode, we are a team that can go and beat anybody in this conference and anybody in this country. So rebounding is what I'm going to be looking for when watching this game.
Yeah, same here. I think Michigan State kind of comes into this one as one of the better rebounding teams in the conference. It's one of their strengths. And I'll just start off with the predictions. I think because of Indiana's struggles on the glass, they're going to end up losing this one on Sunday. I've got Michigan State sort of breaking their slump against IU and winning this game something like 63-60. I think it'll be another close one, but Michigan State will just have a little too much on the glass, get a couple more second chance opportunities. We called out Joey Hauser, but a couple other bigs that Michigan State could use to give us trouble, to give Indiana trouble, or Malik Hall. He's a tough guy inside, as well as Thomas Kithier. He's a tough matchup inside as well. I think Indiana will fight. I think they'll be in it for 40 minutes, but I think Michigan State will end up getting the win. Jevan, I'm going to toss it over to you. How do you see this game going? Who wins and by how much?
See, I think this is a breakout game, but for opposite reasons. I know they're not ranked anymore, but I think this is the game that Indiana goes on the road and they get a really strong Big Ten road win. I think it's going to be close, and I mean, like in all IU games, it seemed this year like they can't get a win that's by more than 5 or 6 points. 65-60, just the little 5-point game.
All right, Matt, what do you have?
Look, I've predicted us to go 2-0 twice this year. Hasn't worked out. So third time's got to be the charm. So 64-58. 63 game-winning shot from Trace Jackson Davis. He exercises his demons of not being able to hit that last shot against Wisconsin and multiple last-second shots in many different games before. Finally gets the win, pull through. We're 2-0 in the Big Ten. We're ranked next, or 2-0 this week. We go 2 games above 500 in the Big Ten, and we're ranked next week. I'm feeling sunshine and rainbows, folks.
Oh, man. How about that? And it's going to be horrible next week if we lose both games. All right, Jevan, as we wrap up tonight, what are your closing thoughts as we wind down here in this episode of the Hoosier Sound?
My closing thoughts is Matt better hope we don't go 0-2 because Monday will not be fun. My closing thoughts is it's good to see some of the NFL, or the people from IU football team go to the NFL. It's amazing to see, players like Freifogel come back. I'm very excited about this Indiana basketball team. I know, like Matt said last week, there's going to be times where we don't play well, but for every time that we don't play well, there's going to be those games that we do play well. And I think that this week is going to be one of those weeks that we do play well. So I'm very excited about this Indiana team, and I'm also really excited that Rob and Al are playing the way they're playing.
Matt, what do you have tonight? Final thoughts.
Stole my thought there, Jevan. Gosh, well, final thought tonight is sky is still not falling for this basketball program yet, which is more than I can say about a lot of different programs around the country. And look, with the pandemic and everything's still being super weird, and them having to stay in hotels and stay in their hotel rooms on a road trip to make sure they can't go outside, so they get bored of doing Instagram lives. This team is hanging in there, all right, and they're fighting through adversity this year. And everybody likes to say the word adversity. Every coach in the world thinks it's their favorite thing, but no, seriously, they quite literally are fighting through unprecedented adversity, getting through it. They're 500 in the Big Ten. Hopefully, this week they can build some momentum, build some building blocks to move forward on, and put a stamp on the season saying IU is back to being decent in basketball, and we have a head coach that's figured it out. And this week has to be the start. Otherwise, I'm going to be wrong and I'll be sad. So let's do it.
The Return to Decency. It sounds like a really great movie, doesn't it? Look, as far as I'm concerned, I already touched on this earlier, but it is still so weird to be going to places like Assembly Hall and Kohl Center and even Camp Randall Stadium earlier this year and see just no one in attendance. It is so bizarre, and it's a season I'm never going to forget, but it's a vivid reminder that COVID-19 is still real and it's still affecting people. We've seen Penn State play, I think, just 3 Big Ten games to this point as far as basketball is concerned. And Nebraska's got a couple games coming up canceled because of, or at least postponed because of issues with positive tests in their program. So it is still a vivid issue. It's still a problem that teams are dealing with. And you better believe that when the Big Ten slate wraps up, it's gonna be a ton of teams, a bunch of different number of games played, and we'll see which teams are sharpest by the end of the season and which teams are still trying to get their rhythm going, because it's been a weird year, and it's gonna be weird as the season winds down. But that about wraps it up for our 177th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you to our live audience. You're all beautiful people. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at the Hoosier Sound and at Indiana HQ to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love.